Hey, what's up guys? Coming at you with a brand new Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile, and today we're doing a deck that you guys have been asking for quite a while, and it is an update to my Familiar Possessed Charmer deck profile. If you guys are unaware, the new structure deck is coming out later this year, and we've already seen the first card with it, which is the new field spell. And I have done an analysis on that card, which I'll put a link to in the video, so if you guys want to go take a look at that, you can. Also, if you haven't seen the original profile we did over a year ago, I'll chuck a link to that as well. With Eria's release in Eternity Code and that new support not too far on the horizon, I think it'd be a great time to take a look at the deck once again. So without any further ado, guys, let's jump into it. Starting things off with our monsters, guys, we have 2 copies of Familiar Possessed Win, 2 copies of Familiar Possessed Heater, 2 copies of Familiar Possessed Eria, and 2 copies of Familiar Possessed Ursa. Now, if you guys will probably notice in this profile, I'm not actually running Dark or Lena. In the original profile, I didn't run Lena either. And as it is, we're basically running 8 vanillas. These are effect monsters, yes, and they are immune to cards that specifically target effect monsters, but we're never going to use their effect. We use them as normal monster, 1850 beat sticks, and of course they'll get pretty big when we do have that Awakening of the Possessed out on the field. If you are running the new Charmer field spell, of course, these are an on-field negate for your field with your field spell, which is great, but we don't run the new field spell, we run Secret Village instead, and I'll explain why. I explain it why in the video as well, but in the analysis video, but I'll also explain it in this why we don't run the Charmer field spell. You're running 8 vanillas as it is already, so running Dark just added on more unnecessary vanillas, and we already have a much better light target in the deck anyway. Speaking of that light target, we do have 3 copies of Fairy Tale Luna. So when Fairy Tale Luna is normal summoned, you can go and grab a spellcaster type monster from your deck with exactly 1850 attack. So obviously she's designed to search herself and the other Fairy Tales. She also happens to be able to search the Familiar Possessed Charmers, which is great. Her second effect, of course, is while she's on the field, you can target a monster your opponent controls and force them to send another copy of that card from their deck or extra deck to the graveyard. If they don't or choose or can't, you bounce that card and Luna back to your hand. This of course will give you another summon off Luna and you'll get to search. So if you can set up Luna, Secret Village, and another spellcaster, of course you'll have spell negates, and you'll also have a bounce interruption, which can be really powerful. Given her 1850 stats as well, her normal summon will also trigger Awakening of the Possessed and draw you a card. And as she's light, that's an extra attribute for Awakening Possessed attack point bonus as well. Next up, we have our pets. We have 2 copies of Gigabyte. Gigabyte, when it can be special summoned if you control a spellcaster type monster and you can only have 1 Gigabyte on the field. When he's destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a monster from your deck whose attack and defense are exactly 1500 and 200 respectively, except Gigabyte. So if he dies, he floats into another one, of course, which is great. Similarly, of course, we have Ranru. So Ranru has the same stats and the same effect. You can special summon it if you have a spellcaster on the field. You can only control 1 of him. If he's destroyed by a card effects into the graveyard, you can target a monster in your graveyard with 1500 attack and 200 defense and special summon it, except himself. And we're also running 1 copy of the Earth pet, Nefarious Archfiend, Eater of Nefariousness, and 1 copy of the Fire pet, Inari Fire. Both of these, of course, have the same summon condition. If you control a spellcast, you can summon them. You can only have 1 of them. Inari Fire says during the next standby phase, after it's destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it. And Archfiend, Eater of Nefariousness says that each of your opponent's end phases, if he's chilling in the grave, you can target destroy 1 of your monsters to bring him back. Now, of course, Inari Fire is probably the weakest of these, as it doesn't work if it's destroyed by battle. But because these guys are level 4s, we're mostly just going to special summon them with their effects to make rank 4s. But of course their destruction effects do work really well in tandem with Unpossessed. So they'll float into another pet, in either themselves or another pet in some way. And then of course you can go grab a Charmer as well. And being so easy to special summon, hey, it's free rank 4s, right? The last 3 monsters in the main deck, we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Pretty straightforward. We want to stop our opponent searching or milling or anything to do with the deck as much as possible. Spells, first off, Awakening of the Possessed, most important spell card in the entire deck, probably the most important card in the entire deck. It prevents our Charmers and Familiar Possessed from being destroyed by card effects. Whenever we normal or special summon a monster, a spellcaster with the original attack of 1850, we get to draw a card. And then for each attribute we have on the field, all our monsters gain 300 attack points. So this card is great. It prevents our Charmers from being destroyed by card effects, it makes them super big, and it allows us to draw cards. This in combination with Secret Village of the Spellcasters can make it really devastating for our opponent to actually play the game. They're not going to be able to play spells, we're going to be able to draw cards, and we're going to have big beefy beat sticks as well. And what's great about this card is it doesn't say for each spellcaster you have on the field with a different attribute, so definitely don't be afraid to go into your extra deck when we're making cards like Babushka to shut down our opponent, because he's going to get extra attack points anyway. Speaking of which, we have 3 copies of Secret Village of the Spellcasters. Like I said, I do mention this card quite a lot in my analysis of the new field spell, which of course link here if you want to go check that out. Secret Village is just so much better for the deck in every way. Yes, you can't search out your pets, but you stop your opponent playing spells. Yes, you don't have an on-field monster negate, but you have continuous spell negates. So as long as you have a spellcaster and your opponent doesn't, you negate spell cards. You stop your opponent from playing spells, and if you don't have a spellcaster, you can't play spells. Very, very strong in this deck. This, in combination with Awakening at the Possessed, the Luna, and the Spellcaster, or this, the Spellcaster, and Babushka, you're really going to hit your opponent hard where it hurts. So you definitely want to be seeing Secret Village of the Spellcasters. I think the reason why the new Charmer card is a field spell instead of a continuous spell is I think they're kind of scared that we'd have like Secret Village, that, and Possessed Awakening, and we just have this epic lockdown. That's possibly the case. I don't know. Anyway, moving on to the rest of more generic spells now. We have 3 Called by the Grave. Pretty standard in all decks at the moment. Absolutely great card. Our deck does not necessarily die to Ash, but our Beat Stick Beater, a Utopia Double, and our Luna and our Pot of Desires do all die to that card. Speaking of which, we have Pot of Desires, so that's why we, of course, run the Cold Bias to stop the Ash. This card, I'm not a huge fan of normally, but it's perfectly fine in this deck because we are running a lot of vanillas and a lot of, duplicate cards, and it can really help us in our deck really, really quickly. Next up, we have a copy of Terraforming, of course, to search Secret Village of the Spellcasters. Double Summon, which allows us to summon 2 monsters, summon out 2 Charmers, that's 600 extra attack right there. And then we have Double or Nothing and Monster Reborn. Double or Nothing, of course, Utopia Double, and Monster Reborn is always good. Moving on to the traps, guys. First off, 3 copies of Unpossessed. So Charmer monsters cannot be destroyed by battle, and our Familiar Possessed monsters, when they attack an opponent's monster, gain 800 attack during the damage step only. That can add up when our Charmers are pretty big as it is. If one of our monsters would be monsters would be destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the grave, we can special summon a monster from our deck with 1500 defense, who's a different attribute to the original monster destroyed. So this works in tandem with, like I said, with our pets, as well as our Charmers being destroyed, which is great. Next up, we have 1 copy of Metaverse, which of course will allow us to go ahead and activate Secret Village in our opponent's turn if we need to. Maybe we just set it, we don't have a Secret Village, our opponent goes search for a spell, we just flip it, and then we start when playing spells, which is great. And finally, we have 2 copies of Solemn Judgment and Solemn Warning. Depending on the deck you're up against, you'll probably side in Solemn Strikes. Feel free to run Imperms in this deck as well. Anything you can run that will actually shut down the opponent as quickly as possible and stop them from beating over your giant beat sticks. Judgments have won me the game before, quite a lot with this deck, especially once you have a Judgment set and they're playing like a monster effect, or they're playing a card they're going to use to wreck your board, boom, or even that stops Evenly. Like Evenly just kills this deck, so you can just Judgment the Evenly, and that is perfectly fine. Moving on to the extra deck, guys. First off, we have the 4 Link Charmers. I hate to say it, but you're probably never going to make these. They are here mostly for flavor purposes. So they all have the same summoning condition that require 1 monster of their attribute plus 1 other monster. They can all summon a monster from your opponent's graveyard that's the same attribute as them, and if they're destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can add a monster of their attribute with 1500 defense or less from your deck to your hand, which is great. Their other effect is that they're treated as a Familiar Possessed card, so that means they're going to be, if you do make one of these over a normal Charmer and you have Unpossessed and the Awakening of the Possessed out on the field, they're going to get the protection from being destroyed by battle from Unpossessed, they're going to get the attack point bonus from Unpossessed, and of course they can't be destroyed by card effects. Although most of the time it's better to have a multitude of different Charmers or something like Utopia Double rather than going into one of these, but we do play them for flavor and they are pretty cool. Moving on, we have 1 copy of Babushka. Babushka is definitely one of the main cards I make a lot in this deck because it's so easy to get 2 level 4s out on the field and maybe even and you just sit behind Babushka if you don't have a Secret Village. So being able to stop monster effects can be really useful. You have to be worried about Link monsters. That's the one thing this guy can't hurt, but this guy is still a really strong card as well. We have 2 copies of Utopia, so this might surprise you why we're running 2. We are running Utopia Double. We're also running Utopia Lightning. Now in this deck, because I'm running Pot of Desires, I really do want to have 2 copies of Utopia, especially also if Utopia Double gets negated and destroyed. Now, of course, Utopia Double can make Utopia Lightning, but just to be safe, and because I have the extra slots in the extra deck, I definitely want to run both copies of these. And of course, next up we have, of course, Utopia Lightning and Utopia Double, all pretty straightforward cards. Great boss monsters for a rank 4 spam deck. Other rank 4 utility we have Tornado Dragon to blow up back row, We have Abyss Dweller to negate Graves, and we do run Waters in this deck, so we have 4 Water monsters in this deck, so the extra attack point bonus isn't too unachievable. We have Castel, which can shuffle a card, and we have Perform Mage Trapeze Magician, which can let one of our spellcasters attack again. Now you might notice I have 2 extra spaces in the extra deck, so if you guys have any suggestions about what I could run in the extra deck for those other 2 slots, feel free to let me know. We may get new extra deck monsters in the structure deck, so they'll probably go in. Of course, guys, this is the end of the deck profile. I hope you guys do enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts below. And of course, as new cards come out for this from the structure deck, I will be tweaking the deck. And once the full structure deck comes out, I will be able to make a fully updated deck profile for you guys. So if you guys want to see that, let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you for my next video.